It was an unprecedented warning from the Secretary-General of the United Nations.
The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable.
The message from Antonio Guterres was simple. World leaders can, should, must do much, much more. Also on News at 10 tonight. In awkward timing, British Gas announces its profits have risen tenfold. The price of principle. Jordan Henderson is accused of selling out to go and play football in Saudi Arabia. Prince Harry is told your court case against the publishers of The Sun can move to trial, though the prince doesn't win on all counts. A coup in Niger and what it says about the spreading influence of Russian Wagner mercenaries in Africa. And in praise of Sinead, fans remember her music and her militancy in Dublin and in London, where she died.
And she was an incredible woman, incredible artist.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. The warning on climate change today from the United Nations was as apocalyptic as the sight of wildfires raging across southern Europe in the past week. The era of global warming has ended, Secretary-General Antonio Guterres declared. The era of global boiling has begun. Climate change is here, he said, and it's terrifying. The air has become unbreathable. The heat is unbearable. Leaders must lead now. The science backs him. New research says this month will be the hottest there has ever been. And our very own Met Office predicted the record-breaking 40-degree temperatures of last summer will be considered cool by the end of the century.
The message doesn't get any starker.
Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning.
Confirmation July is going to be the hottest month humans have ever recorded. And a warning from the UN, the wildfires in Europe and record-breaking temperatures in Asia and North America are a symptom of man-made warming which will threaten us all.
For the entire planet, it is a disaster. And for scientists, it is unequivocal. Humans are to blame. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived.
Experts say without a change in human behaviour, we will have to adapt to extreme weather and high temperatures.
This is shocking, but it's not surprising. We've been looking at the way in which human influence is affecting our climate and average global temperatures for a long time now. So what we're seeing this July is absolutely in line with what we'd expect.
In the UK, the evidence now seems certain. Whilst temperatures fluctuate, the trend, shown here by the dotted line, is undeniably warming. 2022 was the hottest year in the UK since records began in 1884. Scientists say by 2060, those temperatures, which saw one day breach 40 degrees, will be the norm. And by the end of the century, a year like last year will be considered cool by comparison. A reminder, last summer wildfires destroyed homes, rising sea levels ramped up the rate of coastal erosion, and farmers battled with drought.
So this year we've planted 700 acres of sugar beet.
This farm in Suffolk is already adapting. A third of fields which used to grow thirsty crops like potatoes now grow sugar beet, which doesn't need irrigation.
The extremes are where we face the most difficulties. You know, one moment we get 50 mil, 2 inches of rain, and then we don't get anything for 3 or 4 months. So that's the real challenge.
On the coast, near a cliff crumbling due to erosion, Chloe is more focused on her castle than the climate. Whilst she enjoys the present, her nan worries about the future.
I think we've made a little bit of a mess of the world, and it'll be down to their generation to try and sort it all out.
Do you feel bad about that?
Yes, really bad.
The UN says action is needed imminently, as the era of global boiling has already begun.
And I'm joined by Martin and Anushka to talk about all this. Martin, can I start with you? It really felt like today was, I mean, like we've had these warnings so many times before, haven't we? But this felt like a big step change today, which I guess you would say is a reflection of the facts as we're seeing them unfolding.
Yeah, I think so, and partly fueled by the kind of the visceral images of those wildfires we're seeing right across the globe at the moment. But they only tell part of the story, because aside from the fires, which look great on TV news packages and we can associate with because we may have been to some of those places on holiday, you've got almost record levels of polar ice melting. You've got a marine heat wave seeing unprecedented ocean temperatures. You've got sea level rises increasing across the board. And all this is happening at a time when, whilst in this country we are lowering the amount of fossil fuels we're using, if you look across the globe, this year we are using more coal and oil than we've ever used before. And there is a disconnect, actually, between what the public want, it appears, and what they think of what the leaders are doing about it. So a poll out today found that 77% of people said, we are really worried about climate change, but only 26% of the population thought the government here was doing enough about it, and very few more than that thought that Labour would do any better of a job. So there is a clamour for more to be done, but it's a very difficult and a global challenge that we face.
Anushka, given all that, given the lack of confidence, given the dire nature of the warnings, I'm assuming the government had a lot to say about these comments today.
You would think so, wouldn't you, Tom? But no, actually. Critics might say there's been a bit of a deafening silence. I haven't heard anything directly from the Prime Minister, including on his social media, or from the Secretary of State in charge of climate. Grant Shapps tweets a lot, but his last tweet was actually about NatWest. Now, I went to the government tonight and I asked specifically for a response, and I have had one from a government spokesperson that talked about our net zero record and how proud they are of it. But interestingly, they also said that the number one concern right now for families is the cost of living challenge, and that they want to protect people from having increased costs as a result of the net zero effort. And I think in many ways that bit of the statement sort of frames where we are politically and where we have been since the Uxbridge by-election, when the Tories kept the seat because they argued against an environmental policy, ULEZ, that was going to hit people in the pocket. What's happened now is that those who are sceptical about spending a lot of money on net zero on the Tory backbenches have had their voices amplified. They're fighting hard against certain measures that they don't agree with. They want secretaries of state to have to, before anything else, make sure things don't hit people in the pocket. But on the other hand, there are lots of Conservative MPs who care a lot about net zero and who talk about the polls that Martin's just mentioned, about how much people care about this.
OK, let's see how that unfolds in the days ahead. But both of you, thank you very much indeed. Well, just going back to that speech by the United Nations Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, also had strong words for what he called the unacceptable level of fossil fuel profits. Well, British Gas announced theirs today. It seems the company hasn't just got President Putin's invasion of Ukraine to thank for its latest staggering figure, but the energy regulator Ofgem too. It made nearly £1 billion between January and June, up tenfold. Awkward. £500 million came from Ofgem, pushing up the price cap to allow British Gas and other energy suppliers to charge more to recoup earlier losses.
Bumper profits for energy suppliers at a time when energy bills continue to cause hardship. It's enough to make blood boil. Tabani Sitole is with British Gas. She's spending almost twice as much on gas and electricity as she was a year ago, despite taxpayer support and cutting her consumption.
It's unfair, very unfair. They've got big profits which are not being shared with us customers, especially us pensioners who are struggling.
She is upset, he is not. Invited to agree that energy suppliers are profiteering, today the Prime Minister instead pointed to the government's windfall tax on oil and gas producers, which he says was used to subsidise the typical family bill by £1,500 last year.
It's support on the scale of the furlough scheme, to give people context, because I know how important it is for the government and me to ease some of those pressures on the cost of living.
British Gas made a record profit of almost £1 billion in the first 6 months of this year. Scottish Power, EDF and Shell have also reported rising profits during a period when the market price of energy was actually lower. But remember, energy suppliers don't set the price households pay for gas and electricity. Ofgem, the regulator, does. And its energy price cap, currently a very painful £2,000 a year, is designed to ensure bills and profits are at least fair. Last year, when Russia invaded Ukraine and the market price of energy spiralled higher, the cap stood at £1,200. At this level, households were protected from the full impact of market prices, but not suppliers. 29 of them went bust, the biggest being Bulb. In total, 4 million customers had to be rescued by other energy suppliers, but at a cost to them of almost £3 billion. So the main reason that this lot have had an incredible 6 months is Ofgem set the price cap at a level that allowed them to make money and recoup some of their historic costs and losses. The Ofgem price cap does not apply to businesses. Suppliers are free to charge what they like. This jam maker in Bristol is locked into a 3-year contract with EDF and is paying 150% more for energy than a year ago.
It feels quite unethical that the energy companies are making so much profits. We're nowhere near making that kind of profit in our business, so why should they take all the money and take it away from small businesses and ultimately the end consumer?
Ofgem insists these stellar profits are a one-off. The bosses of the energy suppliers kept a low profile today. We need the likes of British Gas to be profitable so they can invest in the transition to net zero and absorb the bad debts that will surely arrive from some of their customers in the months to come. But the question is, how much is too much? John Hills, News at 10.
The row over Nigel Farage's bank account has claimed the job of another boss at Coutts. Its chief executive, Peter Flavel, is now standing down, following in the footsteps of his boss, the chief executive of Coutts' parent company, the NatWest Group, Dame Alison Rose. Nigel Farage says Peter Flavel was the man responsible for stripping him of his Coutts account because of the former UKIP leader's political views. It shouldn't really be a surprise, I guess, in the richly rewarded Premier League that money is a big motivator for many players. And so it appears for Mr. Liverpool club captain Jordan Henderson. Slightly depressingly, one might say, he has confirmed he has joined the Saudi game drain and has signed for Al Ettifaq. That is the team managed by his former teammate Steven Gerrard. Henderson wasn't just the face of Liverpool, he appeared on posters promoting LGBT plus rights. Now he's off to the land of little tolerance and big money, 700,000 a week, reportedly.
Two Liverpool legends now controversially reunited at Saudi Arabian club Al Ettifaq. Henderson was a high-profile champion of the Premier League's Rainbow Laces campaign, and he spoke out passionately for LGBT plus rights.
Little things I can do, like wearing the laces in Premier League, or wear the rainbow armband, little things like that where I can show me support. I try and do my bit, because I think it really is important that we do educate people.
As Liverpool captain, he was celebrated for wearing this rainbow armband.
The hometown hero turned into a global star.
But in his signing announcement video for the club in Saudi Arabia, where homosexuality is outlawed and punishable by death, just take a look. Notice the colours on that arm appear different. The rainbow has disappeared, the only part of Henderson's image to be washed out, replaced by black and white. Fan groups here accuse him of selling out his principles.
This was a man who seemed to be an ally, seemed to be somebody who championed our rights, championed women's rights, and was standing up for ordinary working class values. And why on earth would somebody like that, with those professed values, then try and be lured away just by money to take part in a sports washing operation?
Why would the England international make this move to Saudi Arabia? Henderson hasn't yet explained, but it is reported he'll be paid £700,000 a week at Al Ettifaq, becoming the highest earning English footballer anywhere at the age of 33. Cristiano Ronaldo already moved to Saudi Arabia in January for more than £1 million a week at Al Nassr, but one of the best players in the world, Kylian Mbappe, has rejected a weekly salary of almost £4 million offered by Al Hilal.
Saudi Arabia certainly has the resources to blow out any sport it so chooses in terms of the financial inducements. There's always somebody at the top of the hill paying the highest amount of wages. So that's just part of football. It's always been an industry where the talent has followed the money.
Al Ettifaq heralded Henderson as a hero who runs towards challenges, but LGBT plus fans back home feel he has abandoned them. Peter Smith, News at 10.
There's something just slightly depressing about that story. Now, there was something for both Prince Harry and the publishers of the Sun newspaper to shout about in their privacy battle at the High Court. A judge decided Harry's damages case against the newspaper over unlawful information gathering by private investigators can go to trial, one up for the Prince. But his key claim of phone hacking was dismissed. He should have brought it earlier, the judge said. And Rebecca was in court today and has the task of talking us through this judgment. Over to you.
Yeah, I think both sides were claiming some sort of a win today. According to the judge, success was evenly balanced because Prince Harry's legal action against News Group newspapers can proceed to trial, but elements of his claim have been struck out. He accuses the Sun and the News of the World of using deception to blag his private information, things like his itemised phone bills, his medical records. And he says they paid private investigators to carry out this sort of unlawful information gathering. Today, the judge decided that those allegations should be determined at a full trial. But his claim over phone hacking won't go to trial. It's been struck out. The judge says it's been brought too late. There's a 6-year limitation period. Now, Prince Harry had argued that he couldn't bring that claim any sooner because there was a secret agreement between Buckingham Palace and News Group newspapers whereby members of the royal family would hold off bringing any legal action. Today, the judge dismissed that explanation, saying that his evidence was rather vague and limited. Now, News Group newspapers are describing this as a significant victory. I think Prince Harry's legal team will see it as a setback for the publisher because they'd been hoping this case would be struck out entirely. Now Prince Harry will be back at the High Court as soon as January in a trial in which he accuses the Sun newspaper of really serious illegal activity. And don't forget, this is just one of 3 cases of this kind that he's bringing against 3 different newspaper groups.
OK, Rebecca, thank you very much indeed. Now, a military coup in the West African country of Niger has worried Western governments. The country's elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, is under guard but still able to communicate with the outside world. Under his government, Niger has been France's major base for combating Islamist militancy in neighbouring countries and a buffer against the rising influence of Russia in the region too. The coup leaders say it's Niger's deteriorating security situation that made them act.
On the streets of an African nation central to the West's security concerns, it is the Russian flag they waved, and Russia, the friend, proclaimed as their saviour. We need a win-win partner, not a partner where only the West benefits, he says. Just one voice in a crowd sent out to celebrate a coup. Announced on state TV by rebel army commanders who suspended the constitution and ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, democratically elected and a key ally of the West.
We call for his immediate release. We condemn any effort to seize power by force.
His nation is a bulwark against Islamic terrorism in West Africa. It's the headquarters of French forces and a US intelligence base. It's now the 3rd pro-Western government in the region to be overthrown by its military, after Burkina Faso in January last year, and even more significantly, Mali in 2021. There, French-led troops taking the fight to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State were expelled. And security handed to these men, mercenaries supplied by the Wagner Group. So might history be about to repeat in Niger?
The attraction for the Russians would be making themselves more of a powerful player in the region by upsetting an existing arrangement that is so crucial for the Western countries.
It is probably a coincidence that today Vladimir Putin welcomed African leaders to a conference in St. Petersburg. Among the hosts, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner's boss, the rebel back in the Kremlin's fold, wooing African leaders. In Niger, President Bazoum insisted democracy would triumph, but protesters burned his party's head office. The country is divided between pro and anti-coup factions and perhaps teetering between East and West. John Ray, News at 10.
American military drones are familiar weapons of war used for surveillance and military strikes. Never before have they been routinely launched from bases in Britain. That could be about to change. We have seen documents showing an application to the Civil Aviation Authority to fly US Air Force drones from RAF Fairford in the Cotswolds.
The unmanned eyes in the sky. Drones have been a part of the military aerial arsenal for years, but not from British soil. Now our skies are set to host these aircraft. The US Air Force want to routinely use them from their base in the Cotswolds.
Find the unfindable, discover the undiscoverable. This is what we do.
The Americans are keeping tight-lipped about their plans, but documents submitted by the MOD to the Civil Aviation Authority and seen by ITV News shed light on their intentions. They say there is an emerging requirement to operate regularly from RAF Fairford, and that in a congested and complex airspace, they will not have the required detect and avoid capability to spot other aircraft. The airspace at RAF Fairford routinely plays host to B-52 bombers. Cold War aircraft, mechanical relics compared to the drones that are coming, and for which the Civil Aviation Authority have been asked to free up airspace for unmanned flights.
The underlying technology to allow this is far from mature, and drones crash an awful lot.
Campaigner and researcher Chris Cole monitors the use of military drones. He argues that practically and politically the use of drones here needs to be considered carefully.
Drones are normalising warfare and making warfare much more likely, and that's why we really need to think about and be very clear that the US must not be allowed to use drones from RAF Fairford. Drones are being used outside of armed conflicts more and more to undertake so-called targeted killings, and those killings are undermining global peace and security.
Getting them airborne requires dedicated airspace. If approved, they'll take off and land only after sunset and before sunrise, using an air corridor passing through lower altitudes used by light aircraft before heading above commercial aircraft height of 30,000 feet towards their cruising altitude of 60,000 feet, where they can stay for more than a day.
UAVs have tended to replace manned aircraft in what's called the dull, dirty, and dangerous missions, and reconnaissance generally is a pretty dull mission.
Boring, perhaps, but experts say a drone's information gathering capabilities are crucial.
Britain provides a great geographical base from which to spy on people. It's a great place to base an aircraft because it's a relatively short flight from Britain into the operating areas, which are generally off the coast of Russia or Kaliningrad these days.
The US Air Force told ITV News that due to operational security, we cannot discuss future plans for assets and missions operating in the RAF Fairford airspace. However, they added that they are taking prudent steps to ensure we will have freedom to manoeuvre should the need arise. For Britain and the US, there is, whatever the fears, a benefit of basing drones here, and in so doing, ensuring that eyes are always on the enemy. Rupert Evelyn, News at 10.
After our investigations into sexual abuse and harassment in British fire services, it is perhaps a step forward. Fire chiefs from across the country have now admitted that there is systemic discrimination. The National Fire Chiefs Council accepted today they had not done enough to tackle it and set new targets to stamp out incidents of misogyny, racism and homophobia. Bosses at the Co-op have spelt out just how serious violent shoplifting is becoming and how little help they're getting from the police. What the Co-op calls retail crime has gone up by a third in the past year, with almost 1,000 incidents a day. They have worked out that the police failed to respond to nearly 3/4 of the serious crimes their staff reported.
They'll stop at nothing to get into the shop. Gangs of youths determined to steal, while others sweep the shelves for cigarettes and booze. Attacks like these are on the rise, brazen and violent, with little regard for who gets hurt.
It's very frightening when you've had someone come in your store and threaten you with a knife or a needle.
So what sorts of things do these criminals want?
So they're looking at high value items such as medicines. They could wipe all 3 shelves there off within 30 seconds.
The Co-op say they've seen a 35% rise in violent crime. Physical assaults are up by a third, and yet the police are failing to respond.
So 100% the police are not doing enough to support our stores. The police currently are not responding at all to 71% of reported crime. And here at the Co-op, we only report the really serious incidents.
At £7.85, these are the most expensive steaks in the shop, but shoplifters will have a hard time trying to steal them. Not only is there CCTV at the till, they're also locked up in a security box.
The owner of this newsagent in Greater Manchester serves under 18s through a window and keeps his corned beef hidden to stop it being stolen.
He's throwing his bag on the counters and asking money from my till.
In 2019, he was robbed at gunpoint and still lives in fear.
I still can't sleep if I think about it, because even today at night I'm waking up all the time, keeping my lights on in my bedroom.
At John Lewis, it's headphones and tech that are high value, and staff now wear body cameras after a 26% rise in shoplifting.
We are not seeing theft for need, we are seeing theft for want. And when I talk about those organised gangs and the things they are targeting, they're targeting them because they want to sell them on.
The National Police Chiefs Council say they do target prolific offenders, but in some cases there may not be enough information for police to act upon or bring about criminal proceedings. But for the staff who come to work scared for their safety, it's not enough. And they say criminals will continue to take what they want, when they want, until they're caught. Amy Welch, News at 10.
Perhaps it is just as well that nothing is at stake, apart from pride, that is. In the fifth and final Ashes test, Australia put England to bat and bowled them out after tea. England's Harry Brook hit a dashing 85 to offer some resistance to the Aussie onslaught, but England only managed 283. Root, Stokes and Bairstow made 12 between them. England did manage one Australian wicket, that of David Warner. The Australians ended day one on 61 for 1. Finally, the singer Sinead O'Connor was remembered tonight in the city of her birth and the city of her death. Vigils were held in Dublin and London, where she'd only moved a few weeks ago. Tributes were said, and of course, her amazing music was played.
Be aware that there's any such thing as grieving.
At the Irish Music Wall of Fame in Dublin's Temple Bar, fans of Sinead O'Connor sang as they gathered to pay tribute, remembering an iconic musician whose emotional lyrics and soulful songs touched so many lives, not just in her home city, but around the world.
Is a dangerous day.
I think her music was campaigning as well, so like her lyrics were crossed over between the things she said, the things she sang, the way she lived. I think it all crossed over.
Her legacy is great. There's just so much to Sinead. The pure passion of her music, the grit, the fragility, it just resonates with everybody.
She worked for the people, she sang for the people, she set such an amazing example, and that will be her legacy.
With a fearless attitude and striking look, she refused to conform, her influence spreading much further than just the music industry.
She should be allowed to have it here.
As an activist, she stood up for women's rights, challenged racism, and most famously called out abuse in the Catholic Church on live television.
Fight the real enemy.
In 2018, she converted to Islam, changing her name to Shahada Sadakat, but last year tragically lost her 17-year-old son to suicide.
Hi guys.
In the days before her death, she'd appeared excited about the future and a new album. Police revealed today she'd been found unresponsive in her London flat. Her death is not being treated as suspicious. At the London Irish Centre this evening, celebrities and fans gathered at an event to privately celebrate her life.
I think that she wasn't someone who was ever going to go easy into the night, because to go easy into something would be to be lying, and she never lied, and she always stood up for her own truth.
Her actions and her music continuing to resonate with her many fans. Martha Fairley, News at 10.
The brave and brilliant Sinead O'Connor. That's it. Good night. Thanks for watching.